Hey guys, this is Meeker here. I wanted to do a video explaining Nimble Coat, how this cooldown reduction works, and if cooldown reduction is worth prioritizing in New World overall. But I think it's important to kind of go into how cooldown reduction works in a New World in a high level before we deep dive into Nimble Coat and explain its benefits for certain classes. So cooldown reduction in New World is basically your base cooldown that you have that is inherent to an ability before you actually look at anything else. So for example, for Splash of Light, this where this says cooldown is 15 seconds, that is going to be your base cooldown. This in turn is then subtracted by your cooldown reduction, which is things that are passive effects like refreshing or 50 focus, or sorry, 25 focus. It used to be 50, now it's 25. And then this is then subtracted by your active cooldown reduction. Let's make this yellow to be consistent. And then that return is going to give us our cooldown. And that cooldown is going to be what is shown in game. Now that active cooldown reduction is going to be scaling off this base cooldown, even though we're going to be seeing that actual cooldown in game, which means that if you have a cooldown reduction, you're effectively going to be gaining more value out of your active cooldown reduction because this is going to be scaling off the base, and that cooldown reduction based effect will, although it will be shown, you will get more of an effect than it would appear to be at first. So for example, if you had like a active cooldown reduction that was 10%, and then your base cooldown was 100 seconds, and then you had a cooldown reduction of 10%, this cooldown reduction would apply to this base cooldown, and then this would be a 90-second cooldown, and then of that 90-second cooldown, instead of getting 10% off that 90-second cooldown, which would inherently uh, be like an 81-second cooldown, you're gonna get that that 10% off your base cooldown, so you're effectively getting this like 1 second extra cooldown reduction by having active cooldown reduction stacked with cooldown reduction, if that makes sense. So a lot of cooldown reductions in play, but the important thing to know is that you want to maximize your cooldown reduction if you're going for an active cooldown reduction based setup, because you will just get more value out of those active cooldown reduction based skills. Now, before I like deep dive into the analysis, please sub if you haven't done so. We're still at 24% of people that are sub that are watching these videos on a regular basis, and we would appreciate if we can grow that number a bit more. So if you guys are satisfied with the content, please consider giving back and showing some support that way, so that more people could see this content and more people can understand how a New World kind of works behind the scenes, and we can be more informed in optimizing our builds. All right, so let's get into the math for this. This math is a bit gross at first glance, but I swear it will make sense pretty soon. So down here we have our actual skill that is going to be we're going to be using to show how some of these effects will be kind of influencing. So we're using the splash of light that we went over earlier as an example. This had a 15-second cooldown as a base cooldown reduction. So the base CDR is 15. So that's the thing that was important from the previous slide. And that is something that we're going to be trying to reduce as much as possible for the sake of this example. So say you're using this, this is a Lifestaff specific build. If you're a Lifestaff and you don't have 25 focus, something is wrong with you. You probably should be running 25 focus with a Lifestaff. And also you should probably be running a lot of refreshing if you have a Lifestaff. So those are like not controversial, like just get that out of the way. Nimble Coat is one that's more controversial that we'll get into later, but I want to talk about some other stuff that you may not have known about that the Lifestaff has. So the Lifestaff has this passive called Revitalized that a lot of people take that I don't think everyone reads specifically, but every time you hit someone with a Lifestaff attack, you reduce your active ability cooldowns by 5%. So that's a 5% like quote unquote refreshing move built into it. And if we have that say proc 4 times between cooldowns, because say like we have like a 11-second cooldown here, like we're probably going to be hitting an auto at least 4 times, so we could expect that to be proccing somewhat. And then say we have refreshing move on our Lifestaff, so that's going to be proccing the same amount. And then there's other bonuses here too that are a little bit less known. There is a 350 focus bonus that will give you a 20% cooldown reduction base effect when you cast an ability. So if you cast an ultimate, that's going to reduce all your cooldowns by 25% and effectively allow you to kind of use more cooldowns on your life staff and allow you to heal more if you time when you're actually going to use that stone form from an offensive purpose, not just a defensive purpose. I don't think everyone has adapted to yet. So if we were to enable that and we were able to proc that once, now we have transformed that cooldown that was originally 15 seconds into a 4 second and or 4.35 second cooldown. Now, to be honest, I don't know if you're going to be able to hit that many autos in that time. Like you have 8 seconds, you could hit about an auto a second, so that would be hitting 50% of your autos. So let's be like a little conservative there and say you could hit 3 autos, because I think that's a little bit more realistic. And then the other thing that we could throw on here as well is that we throw on Nimble Coat. We kind of have our fully optimized setup. You're hitting 3 autos between casting that kind of clap based ability with Splash of Light. You're going to be able to cast this cooldown that was originally 15 seconds in 4 seconds approximately, depending on how many autos that you hit with a refreshing move based build. Now, say that we didn't have this refreshing move based build, so uh, let's go to like the optimal case with those 4 seconds there, and we'll just use this as a reference. So if we were to maximize everything, we'd be at a 3.5 second cooldown. Now, say that we were to take off that Nimble Coat, we would be at a 4.35 second cooldown. So that's a small increase, but still significant, and you are losing approximately like 25% of your cooldowns based off that. If we were to go from 4.35 to 3.15, or sorry, let's do that the other way. So we're losing like roughly 30% of our cooldown by putting on that Nimble Coat at this point. So Nimble Coat is like very, very good for reducing that cooldown reduction, which is like kind of the case for do you want survivability or do you want to cast more cooldowns, right? And that's the value that you kind of get out of Nimble Coat that I think is a little bit less seen. Say that you weren't proccing your ult and you had that Nimble Coat on as well. This would be like a 6 second cooldown. So you could see like the more conditions that you can make, the better this is. But the main thing to take away here from a healing perspective is if there's a time where you need to actively heal people and you didn't want to switch your gear too much, it's really important to pop that ult offensively to give yourself that 20% cooldown reduction, because the difference between having that 20% cooldown reduction and not having it is such a big deal. We go from that 6 second cooldown, we pop our ultimate, and now it's a 3 second cooldown. It's literally reducing it in half because of the way that active cooldown reduction and that kind of passive cooldown reduction interacts with kind of behind the scenes that we went over at the beginning of the video. So that's like one main thing I want to take away for you guys from that specific setup. Now let's reset this and let's look at a few other builds here. So that was like the Lifestaff portion. Basically, Nimble Coat will reduce your cooldowns effectively in half if you are using it with a refreshing move based setup. If you're not using a refreshing move based setup, you're going to be having cooldowns that are roughly like 30% longer, I believe it was, or we can go back to that case. So we have 4 refreshing, we hit 4 autos, that was the case that we're looking at, and say that we didn't have that refreshing move on, but we were still able to hit our ult, then we're getting a 4.65 second cooldown, versus what it would be before if we had everything lined up and it would be a 3.15 second cooldown. So that refreshing move is going to allow you hit those abilities roughly 30% quicker, but at the cost of that, you're not going to be able to hit your abilities as hard. Shout out to kind of the New World guides where we have like some of the or New World builds where we have some guides posted there that Sherlock's been helping us out with. But a lot of people have been debating running this Purifying Breeze or this Refreshing Move, and both of them are really good. Purifying Breeze will allow you to heal people for 33% more, but that Refreshing Move will allow you to heal people 30% faster, right? So would you rather cast abilities more often, or would you rather have one ability heal for much more? I would argue that it's probably better to have that cooldown base effect if you're going for that Refreshing Move kind of base setup where you're trying to maximize that by running Nimble Coat. But if you're trying to be a more defensive healer and just cast abilities when needed, that's where I would consider going for that Featherweight setup with a Purifying Breeze, if that makes sense. So you want to play to your strength here. If you have cooldown reduction, like I think you just full send it on the cooldown reduction, get that as low as possible. By casting more of these claps, you're going to effectively be healing yourself more and your teammates for more, and you're going to be getting ult faster, and it kind of cycle well together. So I think those cooldown reduction based setups are kind of ideal for focus builds. But I'm a person who does not play healer a lot and does not get staggered all the time by 10 people casting a monkey ult in my backline, so that might not be ideal from some people's perspective. But if you are trying to play more for staying alive, this could be better for you because you're going to be able to cast clap more. You're going to be able to heal yourself and your allies more, and you're not going to be as punished for not being able to cast as many cooldowns. So that's something to kind of consider there. Now going into a few other builds here. Now let's look at, instead of looking at the Lifestaff, let's look at Void Gauntlet. Now Void Gauntlet is really interesting in particular because it has the ability Refreshing Precision, where every time you crit, you get 5% cooldown reduction. This is an active cooldown reduction. And Refreshing Frailty, which will give you 5% cooldown reduction when you're hitting someone with a bunch of debuffs, which has been really common recently because Rune Glass is so prevalent, and that Rune Glass will count as a debuff, so people tend to have both of these proc pretty consistently. So if we look at this example again, but we look at it for something like Purifying Scream on a Void Gauntlet, because that's one thing that you really care about a lot. This inherently has a 25-second cooldown, right? So let's move this up to 25. This is where we're starting out at, and let's see how much we can reduce this cooldown by kind of going for different bonuses that are better for the Void Gauntlet itself. Now, there's a lot going on here in terms of this one specifically. We have that Refreshing Frailty that I talked about. We put Refreshing Move on here because some people like to run that. Refreshing Precision, and 350 Focus is an option as well that I don't think a lot of people go for on the Void Gauntlet, but is an optional setup to allow you to kind of chain those cooldowns a little bit better. The argument for this is you'd be able to maybe at some point, which we'll get into the math here, go for a Scream into Obliv or Obliv into Scream, whichever you prefer. I know it's changed a little bit with the patch, into Vines, into the Scream, and then etc. Like you can kind of cycle those, and you wouldn't have to use that step where you would cast your orb for extra cooldown reduction, or you could cast your orb as well, and this would just be a safer version of that original combo. So starting out here, let's not talk about Nimble Coat, because this is usually a build that's running heavy, and you are basically every single time running magnetic gloves, so Nimble Coat is not something you really want to be considering for this build very often. Now 25 Focus, you should have that as an IGVG in my opinion. There's some people who do not run that. I think those people are stupid for that active cooldown reduction thing that I talked about. You probably should be running for Refreshing, again, same argument. Your build-specific cooldown reduction for this. We have Refreshing Frailty. Now, this caps out at 5, so say that we're hitting 5 people with every Scream, we're hitting 5 people with every Orb, or actually, that would be, the C here would be 5 people with every Orb, because that is our Refreshing Precision. So say we're getting enough crits to max out, we're getting enough hits on our Refreshing Frailty to max out. Now, this is just 5, right? 5 cases, which you think would be the max, but the thing with this is this will apply off of each ability itself. The Orb of Decay has 2 parts that can crit. It has the initial orb and it has the detonate itself. So actually, this could be up to 10, and say it is up to 10. Oh, all of a sudden we have no cooldown, right? Say we hit 8 people with this. Oh, we have no cooldown. Say we hit 7 people with this. Oh, now we finally have a cooldown. But say we don't have this 25 focus, say we don't have this refreshing, oh, we have cooldowns again. So you could see that benefit of running that active cooldown reduction, where you're going from needing to hit 10 people in total to only being able to have to hit 7 people in total to start going infinite with these kind of specific builds. Or I guess it was 8. But like you get the idea there. Like you're gaining a pretty large benefit by running the refreshing, by running that 25 focus that I don't think is initially as present. But let's go back to like a less kind of alarming case, like say that we only hit 5 people, we're not gods, we don't hit every single person with our oblivion as our orbs or whatever. Now we've already taken this 25-second cooldown down to 7.5 seconds. This is going to be, again, you could proc this again from going from orb into scream, scream into orb, so you wouldn't need to necessarily do too much more here to get that cooldown down. But say for some reason we really wanted to make sure that we can go infinite all the time, and we ran that 350 focus. Now all of a sudden our cooldown is 2.5 seconds, so we can almost go scream into scream. Which is kind of incredible. If we hit one more person, if we hit 6 people with our combo, you would be able to go like or I guess this wouldn't count for Scream exactly because you can only hit up to 5 people with Scream for that to max out. But if you hit 5 people with Scream, you'd have a 2.5 or 2.25 second cooldown. So by the time you cast your Scream, you go into your vines, this is basically going to be up again, and you're going to be able to go from Scream into vines into Scream again, which is absolutely crazy with that 350 focus space setup. Now, say we didn't run that because we're a sane person and we decided that we wanted to have mercy on people and run 350 imp because we wanted to see larger numbers and didn't care about how many cooldowns we actually pressed. That's perfectly reasonable, but say now we run Refreshing Move instead as a different setup. You can see that the Refreshing Move is not actually bringing a large benefit for the amount of autos that we're hitting. It's giving us a decent amount of cooldown reduction, but it's not insane. But the thing that I didn't mention here is you can get that active cooldown reduction from your Refreshing Move that would be applying on the other passives that are inherent to Void Gauntlet. So that Refreshing Frailty, that Refreshing Precision, that could also apply off your autos. So say you threw 2 autos and one of them crit. And then the other was able to apply the Refreshing Frailty. All of a sudden, we have 100% cooldown reduction. So that Refreshing Move is still really good, even with these kind of high crit damage reduction base setups. Now, say that we didn't go. Okay, you shouldn't do this, but say for argument's sake, we went for Nimble Coat instead of going Magnetic Gauntlets because you were one of those people that was really unlucky and you didn't get Magnetic Gauntlets after 35 tries. Would this be better? Would this be worse? It would be a pretty similar spot. We would expect to be critting a little bit less, so I'll move that down a little bit. And you can actually see our cooldown reduction is actually in a pretty similar spot to where it was before. We do 2 autos, and we're not as close as we were before. Like, say we hit one more crit off of this, and we got like relatively lucky. Uh, we would basically not have much of a cooldown left, but we'd still have a cooldown left. So that basically just confirms that Nimble Coat is worse than Magnetic Gauntlets for Void Gauntlet specific builds, which shouldn't be as a surprise to anyone. But I think that's something that's just like nice to go out there. So this is like something for Void Gauntlet specifically. We're running that refreshing, running that kind of 25 focus, running that what do you call it, the refreshing move specifically can be really beneficial because it will allow you to go infinite more often, which will allow you to do more, as well as that 350 focus. Although it's kind of overkill, it's a very safe way to secure going for a combo fully. So say you accidentally missed your orb, you're like, oh no, I'm gonna have to wait like 3 seconds before I can cast another Scream, another Oblivion, and that dang Flail guy just used his Arcane Vortex and he's letting everyone escape from that really juicy grab combo. You could, if you ran 350 focus, you could just pop that and boom, all your cooldowns are back up. You could drop that Oblivion, get rid of that, scream them, lock them in place again. They're going to die to that grab combo. So this would be a case that would help you kind of deal with that super, super refreshing base setup better, or like that kind of flail base setup. Now there is a build that takes advantage of all this as well as counters this entire base effect because it elongates stuff off your base cooldown reduction. Some of you guys know what build I'm talking about already. It is the build that I play as my main build because I'm a terrible person, and it is Flail VG. Now, Flail VG is very special because it is able to have more cooldown reduction than most builds are able to otherwise. Flail VG is able to do this because of a way to, or an ability called Epic Flail, which will allow you to elongate other people's cooldowns with Arcane Smite as well as reduce your own cooldowns. So say we had our Arcane Smite here, 18-second cooldown, and we start looking at reducing this down further. I think I have something bugged here, but we could still like kind of go through this exercise and kind of figure out what is going on from this build specifically that makes it so good. So say we had this ability, Arcane Smite, and we were able to hit 5 people with this, which is like pretty consistent within a clump. And say we ran 25 focus because you should be running that. Say we ran Floor Refreshing because you should be running that. So we're able to hit all those people. Our 18-second cooldown is now at 8.9-second cooldown, which is pretty good from a cooldown reduction based standpoint. Say we're able to get in like maybe 1 or 2 autos. Now we're all the way down to a 7.9 or like an 8-second cooldown. We're down significantly here. I don't think the autos really help as much for this build as some of the other builds. But if we were to run like Nimble Code on top of that, it would be even more effective. You kind of get the idea here. Now, the thing I want to kind of show here that is a little bit silly is you don't even need to run Nimble Coat for this build to be effective because your shield already has a 5% base cooldown reduction base effect if you run a kite shield. So you're going to be able to spam this more. And if we had a case where we're able to use our ultimate and we were able to get a few procs off of that refreshing move, we're basically not going to have any cooldowns at all. So say we didn't even like want to go for any autos on our flail itself. Say that we just had refreshing move, say proc like 2 times, and we ran 2 refreshing moves. That would be 4 in total, 4 procs. Our smite would now have a 3.7-second cooldown, which is very, very low. If we get like 1 or 2 hits of refreshing move in there, now it's a 3-second cooldown. So the spot where this gets very interesting is this build has the ability to go for what I would like to call like an infinite cooldown rotation that is not really possible for many other builds. And the idea here is that you can go for Smite, which will stagger people, into Vines, which will reduce the cooldown of Smite, into either Trip or Scream. And then you run and then you do the other one. And then from here, you can go back into your Smite. And then you can go like Oblivion, into Orb, which will reset your Scream. So basically, you can do a combo like this. There's like different variants as well, but you can get like, and then this will also probably have enough cooldown reduction to get another Smite off. And you can sort of go soft infinite off of this because this will build your ultimate in about 15 to 20 seconds on a not super clumped kind of situation, and in the super clump situation, I've gotten ultimate as fast as 10 seconds with the setup. So you can go, you're basically able to go infinite with this setup or go soft infinite, and you're able to get 1 to 2 smites consistently, sometimes 3 smites off, which are elongating other people's cooldowns by 70%. So you're basically shutting down everyone within a clump from being able to use cooldowns, and you're going to be able to lock them in place with this combo, which is a situation that I didn't really realize with Flail VG in the past, where Flail VG is actually really, really good if you go for 350 focus, because these abilities have grit built into them. You're not going to get staggered while going for them, and that will be able to reduce the cooldown of your abilities future on, and you're just going to be able to stagger people over and over and over again. So TLDR, cooldown reduction is very good, but if you go for it, you kind of tend to want to go all in on it. So if you are going for that kind of more Lifestaff oriented setup, I would recommend going for either kind of a more defensive setup where you go for the featherweight and you go for Purifying Breeze, or you go for Nimble Coat and you go for Refreshing Move, because they tend to benefit each other. I think that Nimble Coat and Refreshing Move tends to be a little bit better because that will allow you to get more claps off. More claps off will mean that you're going to keep yourself up more, you're going to be able to keep your team up more, and will overall allow you to just live better. With that being said, I hope this was informative to you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns with this setup, but it's a little bit confusing. If you want to see more of that 350 focus flail gameplay, I've been streaming it on Twitch. Shout out to my own Twitch there, and I'll see you guys